It's a scandal. It's an outrage. It's absolutely the end of the Trump presidency. Signal gate is just sweep. I'm sorry, I can't even finish this with a straight face. It's a whole lot of noise. We're going to cut through it all and tell you what this thing is really all about. The war plans discussed on text messages. That's coming up in just a moment. Also, Jasmine Crockett is an offensive Neanderthal jerk. Can I say Neanderthal? Sure, why not? But she makes for good sound bites, and we're going to enjoy making fun of her eyelashes and a whole lot more coming up in just a second. Crazy town over on a CNN panel. Lamenting the murderers and gang members who have been deported. And a judge has decided that we're treating illegal immigrant criminals worse than we treated Nazis. She didn't mention Dresden, but I'm sure that she took that into account. We've got that and a whole lot more coming up. It's like a tear-jerking episode of The Chosen, but without Jesus or the apostles or Holy Scriptures or any reference to religion, really. But other than that, it's exactly like that. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. I like The Chosen. It's good stuff. He's a little old to be Jesus, let's face it. Dude's pushing 50. But, you know, he's got this timeless wisdom, which I would expect Jesus to have, even when he was 33. Tariff wars, recession fears, stubborn inflation. In this environment, gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs in volatile markets like right now. So don't sit on the sidelines with your head in the sand. Take control and safeguard your savings. That's why so many Americans today are turning to Birch Gold Group. They've helped tens of thousands converting an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. Is it time for you to find out if you can hedge against inflation and economic instability with gold? To learn how to own physical gold in a tax-sheltered account, text my name, Larry, to 989898. Birch Gold's going to send you a free, no-obligation info kit. Again, text my name, Larry, to the number 989898. They've got an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, countless five-star reviews. I count on Birch Gold, so can you. It took us decades to get into this tangled economic mess we're in right now. How long is it going to take to get out of it? And at what cost? And what can you do in the meantime? Text my name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. Do it today. All right, well, yesterday we learned about a huge scandal in the Trump administration had to do with Pete Hegseth and the national security team, including Vice President J.D. Vance, sharing wartime plans in Yemen and with the Houthis with a journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic. They accidentally plugged him into this group chat. This is insanity. What's going on? It's not what you're hearing, obviously. There are some questions that need to be asked about this, but we've already gotten most of the answers to them. And there is a scandal here, but it's more of a journalistic scandal, actually, than it has to do with our Secretary of Defense and our National Security Advisor. First, let's look at how the media first framed this story. You're Jeffrey Goldberg. You get this huge blockbuster with The Atlantic. You publish it, and where do you go first? Well, of course, you go to Jen Psaki on MSNBC.
Responsible here and not disclose the things that I read and saw. I will describe them to you. The specific time of a future attack, specific targets, including human targets, meant to be killed in that attack, weapon systems, even weather reports that are, that the government is I don't know why Hegseth was sharing it with everybody. I mean, the precise detail and then a long section on sequencing. This is going to happen, then that is going to happen. After that happens, this happens, then that happens, and then we go and find out if it worked. I mean, he can say that it wasn't a war plan, but it was a minute by minute accounting of what was about to happen.
Okay. It wasn't a war plan, he conceded. It was just a minute by minute accounting of what was about to happen, but he can't show that to you because he's being responsible. But trust him. After all, he's Jeffrey Goldberg. Now, here was the headline that they ran with. The Trump administration accidentally texted me its war plans. But didn't he just say that it wasn't a war plan? I think that's what he just said. Hold on.
Wasn't a war plan.
Hold on. I'll back it up a little further.
Then that happens. And then we go and find out if it worked. I mean, you know, he can say that it wasn't a war plan, but it was a minute by minute.
See how he's struggling to figure out and how to describe what this so-called war plan was, since Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth denied this and said it wasn't a war plan. If it's a war plan, then he should just be able to say, well, he says it's not a war plan, but it is a war plan. They ran it in the headline, didn't they? Trump administration accidentally texted me it's war plan, so it must be a war plan. So here's what Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said after that headline ran.
Can you share how your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic? And were those details classified?
By the way, I think that's White House correspondent Mary Margaret Olahan, friend of this program, friend of all of us. She's a great person. But see, this is how these insidious things happen. She's asking the question of the Secretary of Defense. And the question is, can you explain how these war plans got shared? When, of course, how do we know this is a war plan? We saw a look at the text messages, and it wasn't a war plan. What was detailed in the article was not a war plan. In fact, there's nothing in the article that actually fits the description of a war plan, but it's in the headline, damn it. And so now this is how this thing starts getting perpetuated, even with good reporters like Mary Margaret from the Daily Signal. So here's the question. How did your war plans? And you see Pete Hegseth starting to laugh because he knows what a war plan looks like. So here's his answer.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. And you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
That's it.
That is the bottom line here, because the headline, I remind you, is the Trump administration accidentally texted me war plans. He released screen images of 2 of those group chats on Signal. Here's one of them after one of the strikes against Houthi enclave in Yemen. J.D. Vance, excellent. John Ratcliffe, that's the CIA director. Good start. I do like Michael Waltz using emojis. American flag fire. Good job, Pete and your team. Team in Mar-a-Lago did a great job as well. Great work. So that is pretty damning. Everyone saying good job on Signal. I mean, this could have been after your first 2 rounds of the March Madness bracket came in. I don't think there's anything compromising there that we need to worry about. And the first point he made about The Atlantic and Jeffrey Goldberg is a valid one. I mean, after all, just take a look at some of the great journalistic work that The Atlantic has done over the last several years in defense of naked Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the most influential vice president in history. It's totally normal that Joe Biden's son works for a Ukrainian energy company. I'm not kidding. These are real headlines. Stay alive, Joe Biden. Run, Joe, run. Why Democrats need a Biden candidacy. WTF, leave Biden alone. They actually put WTF in the headline, which is more juvenile than even Michael Waltz using emojis in his Signal chat. Joe Biden's dating advice for girls. That's something that I'm going to click on. Biden gets China. Can the Times bare-chested Biden be explained? Biden tells 3rd graders Obama is really cool. Joe Biden crazy like a fox. Thank you to our buddy Mays there on the X platform are putting together those headlines to show you how great the journalism work is over at The Atlantic. Again, like I said, there is something revealing about this. There is something somewhat embarrassing about this story. And there's certainly some questions that need to be asked. last night, some of those questions were still hanging in there. Probably the biggest one was, is it appropriate for people in the national security apparatus to be discussing anything like this, whether it's a war plan or not, on a commercial over-the-counter app like Signal, despite the fact that there are security protocols in Signal. There are a lot of people who work in government who utilize Signal for that very reason. It's much better than WhatsApp, which is just a garbage application, or Messenger, or what have you. But is this appropriate? Is this right? And did this violate any protocols in the federal government? Well, that's a good question that needs to be answered, and it finally did get an answer. We'll give it to you in a second. But let's turn last night to CNN, where Scott Jennings, as usual, sort of boils down all of the hype and noise and crystallizes it into a few basic points that we should all bear in mind.
A shock inside the White House that this chat was texted to Jeffrey Goldberg. Are you shocked?
Well, sure. I mean, it's a shocking thing, and they've admitted that it was a mistake and admitted that it's authentic. So they're owning up to it. I think they're still, based on what I've heard tonight, trying to figure out how it happened. I'm not sure the National Security Advisor Walls even knows Goldberg. In fact, I don't believe he knows him and has never met him. I did learn a few things in some of my conversations, if you're interested. One is that the Signal program was preloaded on a number of devices and agency computers in this circuit when they got there. So in their view, it was already in use. Number two, in some of the messages, they talk about needing to go to the high side computers, which is the classified system. So they clearly were knowing there was a line on what you could discuss in a chat like this versus classified system. Number three, there is a dispute over whether the term war plans is being exaggerated. And number four, look, I love the policy. It's well executed. You've got a thoughtful policy discussion going on. And we did what the Biden administration would not do: stop these people from harassing our shipping lanes and our boats and our Navy. So good on the Trump administration for reversing a bad policy.
So that's brilliant. And I want to start here with point number 4 there, which is who's dead at the end of the day here? Who lost their life because of this terrible scandal? And the answer is only a bunch of scumbag terrorists. Scumbag terrorists who are allowed to live under the Biden administration. Scumbag terrorists who were threatening the lives of members of the United States Navy and Marine Corps on a regular basis. And now they're dead. And all the rest is noise, because the bottom line is it's good policy and it was executed flawlessly. Point number 2, though, is very important. When you look at the text, there is conversation about, I shared X, Y, and Z information with you on High Point, or High Side, I believe it is. What that means is that is a secure communication system that they use for granular detail that should not be shared on this app. They were conscious and aware that the conversation that they were having on Signal did not rise to the level of the kind of protection that you need in one of the more encrypted, secure areas. So this is a question of, and you can quarrel with it if you want, but this is a question of convenience. Listen, there's a lot of times where things are only discussed inside a SCIF, which is a specialized room that is impossible to crack into or eavesdrop or surveil in any way whatsoever. And those conversations happen at the Pentagon. They've got them at the National Security Agency. They've got them at the White House. They've got them. That's a thing. Some people who work in the administration have a SCIF installed in their home so that if they have to, they can go into a SCIF to have a private, secure conversation or meeting. Obviously, this didn't rise to that level. You've got a coordinated conversation with people across the planet. One of the members of this conversation was literally in Moscow at the time that they had this conversation. And sometimes you reach a point where the only convenient way to get people together is on a secured, but not top secret secured, texting app like Signal. And so they went ahead and did that. You also heard in point number 1 from Scott Jennings that there were devices that already had Signal installed when these people came into this administration, because this is not new. The prior administration and the first Trump administration utilized Signal for a lot of private correspondence and communications. In fact, earlier this morning, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who was one of the people on that conversation, happened to be on Capitol Hill at a Senate hearing, and he was asked about this.
So that we're clear, one of the first things that happened when I was confirmed as CIA director was Signal was loaded onto my computer at the CIA, as it is for most CIA officers. One of the things that I was briefed on very early, Senator, was by the CIA records management folks about the use of Signal as a permissible work use. It is. That is a practice that preceded the current administration to the Biden administration.
Ratcliffe.
That is correct. So there's your CIA director dispelling one of the concerns. Is it appropriate to have this kind of conversation on Signal? And the CIA director said, no, actually, we were giving guidance about this going in, and there are certain conversations you can have and certain conversations that you shouldn't have. And it seems like, looking at these text messages, that Jeffrey Goldberg went blaring out there with this headline, "They texted me war plans," which is clearly now, as we see it, a lie. That's a fake headline from The Atlantic, but we're used to that with Jeffrey Goldberg. Then this was an appropriate conversation to have. They knew the guidance and they adhered to that guidance. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, confirmed that as well under oath today during her testimony.
Contact the defense secretary or others after this specific military planning was put out and say, hey, we should be doing this in a skiff?
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if
Signal
there was no
chat.
classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have it both ways. These are important jobs. This is our national security. Bobbing and weaving and trying to, filibuster your answer. So please answer the contact.
All right, so that's Senator Mark Warner getting really upset about this, but I don't remember him getting upset over some other things that have happened in the past. We'll get into that in just a second. Look at the Chiron, though, because this is how these things happen. Look at CNN's Chiron. Top intel officials testify amid war plans group chat fallout. War plans? They're still saying there were war plans. Can somebody show me the war plans, please? Because I missed the war plans. I ask you something. If you're a journalist, well, yeah, separate that. If you're Jeffrey Goldberg and you suddenly get a notification on your phone that you've been included into a group chat, and you open up the app and it turns out that the vice president, the secretary of defense, and the national security advisor are there talking about a strike against the Houthis, do you just lurk there and watch everything go by? Or do you say, hey, guys, I don't think I'm supposed to be in this chat. I think you made a mistake, and then leave? Now, what's ironic here is that I guarantee you, and I mean I guarantee you, that if it were under the Biden administration and it was Lloyd Austin who erroneously included Jeffrey Goldberg into a Signal chat, that's exactly what he would have done. Exactly what he would have done. That's what any normal person would have done, unless you're Jeffrey Goldberg and you're intent on lurking and trying to get a screaming sensational headline. That said, he should have never been included in this chat in the first place. And we'll get to that coming up in just a sec. But it's important to put this all in perspective first. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma wanted to share his thoughts with the world on social media. And of course, that means he had to flip his phone vertically instead of horizontally.
I wanted to visit with you real quick about this Houthi situation. It's interesting to me that the left media is going nuts about this Signal exchange between the president's cabinet and the discussion on moving forward with eliminating the threat that's been taking place. Now, mind you, they didn't say really a whole lot about the Houthis when they were attacking our warships 174 times since 2023, while President Biden literally sat in the White House on his hands like this, did nothing. Now that the Trump administration has decided to take action, instead of saying thank you for protecting our men and women that are on our ships every single day, instead of saying that, they're focusing on a Signal chat. I think what it exposed, though, was the fact that there was serious discussion, even different of opinion, yet they came to the final conclusion that the Houthis needed to be eliminated because they're a terrorist organization. I, for one, thought it was intriguing to see the open conversation. I like the idea that they were actually having a discussion about it. But what I like more than anything is President Trump's cabinet, and President Trump led from peace through strength. We should never allow somebody to bully anyone, especially the United States, and attack our ships and not have to answer for it. If you punch us, we're going to put our foot on your throat and squash your neck. That's the response that had to happen, and that's what President Trump did.
That's right. And, it's funny. You really didn't hear much about the fact that the USS Stockdale and the USS Gettysburg have been under fire for over a year now, ever since October 7th. It's amazing how that October 7th terror attack suddenly gave terrorists the green light to go after American ships. stationed over in the Gulf, but that's exactly what's been happening. And they've been under fire on a routine basis, having to shoot down drones and missiles coming after them. And you don't hear a damn thing. In fact, we even had a friendly fire tragedy where one of our jets coming off of the Truman, I believe it was mistaken by the Gettysburg, and it got shot down erroneously. Thank God the Navy pilots were able to bail before the missiles, before the rockets hit the aircraft and blew it out of the sky. But this is dangerous stuff we're talking about. I happen to know an officer who was assigned to the Stockdale who has been dealing with this on a regular basis. This is a young junior officer right out of the Naval Academy. You get on the Stockdale, this is going to be great. And the next thing you know, you're 6 months out of the academy and you're under fire and dealing with defensive maneuvers against drones and missiles from these dirtbag terrorists. And went on for over a year. And you didn't hear anything. Jeffrey Goldberg didn't give a crap about that. And now finally we do something about it. And their big objection is that they were having an open discussion on a semi-secured encrypted texting message app that Goldberg should have never been included on. And if he had any integrity, he would have backed out immediately. It is interesting to see where people put their priorities. In fact, the spokesperson for the White House, Caroline Leavitt, sort of laid that out this morning. Jeffrey Goldberg, well known for his sensational spin. Here are the facts. There were no war plans discussed. So just take the word war plans out of your midst. There is nothing. You go back and look at these text messages on Signal. There is literally nothing being discussed by SecDef, by Veep, and by National Security Advisor that was not discussed openly on cable news for the last couple of weeks before the green light was given for this. Nothing. There was nothing secret about anything that was discussed there. Number two, no classified materials sent in the thread. And number three, the White House counsel's office has provided guidance on a number of different platforms for President Trump's top officials to communicate as safely and efficiently as possible. The only real breach here that one could have been concerned about was the fact that they were discussing certain matters on an over-the-counter commercial app like Signal. But now that's been responded to. That's been explained. CIA Director Ratcliffe, as you just saw, you had devices that they inherited from the prior administration that already had Signal, or new devices had Signal immediately installed because that was the protocol. And yes, some conversations can be had there. Other conversations have to be taken to a higher encrypted level. As the National Security Council stated, the White House is looking into how Goldberg's number was inadvertently added to the thread, thanks to the strong and decisive leadership of President Trump and everyone in the group. The Houthi strikes were successful and effective. Terrorists were killed, and that's what matters most to President Trump. And that should be what matters most to you. At the end of this story, who lost their life? Terrorists. That's a good thing. Spokesman for the Pentagon. Congressman Greg Steube, out of Florida, says, while Joe Biden played possum in Rehoboth Beach, President Trump is taking the fight to the Houthis. Houthis have launched more than 300 attacks on the U.S. warships and commercial vessels since 2003. Secretary Hegseth, NSA Waltz, and the entire Trump administration formulated an effective strategy, crippling the Houthis and their puppet masters in Tehran. The end result was the Houthis finally faced some justice for the atrocities. Give me the Secretary of Defense, National Security Advisor, who actually stepped up and made our enemies pay for having messed up in the United States. Let's finish off the terrorists and keep America safe. Thank you, Congressman Steube. I want to hand it over to my colleague and literally best friend, Chris Tegal. He does mornings for Salem Radio Network, and he had a great segment earlier today about putting this in perspective, because this is all you see now on cable news, broadcast news, the people wringing their hands, and, squishy, spineless Republican or conservative commentators were like, oh, this is terrible. We have to hold ourselves to a high standards. We have to listen. I recognize that we ran on the idea that there would be accountability for mess ups, right? And there should be accountability here. The only big mistake that I see is that somebody brought in Jeffrey Goldberg to the chat. And everyone's saying, oh, it's Mike Watts. I don't think the National Security Advisor is in there bringing people in on a group chat. My guess is that it was someone in his staff, chief of staff, maybe an intern in the comms department. I don't know. But my guess is that's who set up the chat. That's who made this mistake. I don't think it was Mike Waltz, but there needs to be accountability. My understanding is that he took ownership of it. He's a Green Beret after all. He apologized to the president, and the president is standing by him. All right, so don't get me wrong. We are the accountability party. But for us to hold ourselves up to a standard that the left never holds themselves up to is political suicide. All right? We don't play by the rules that they demand we play by when they refuse to play by any rules. And that's what Stegall points out here.
13 of our service personnel were killed almost right away when the Husk took over in his hasty exit from Afghanistan. A Chinese spy balloon floated over our land for 8 freaking days. You had 3 different Democrats, Governor Hochul of New York, the late Dianne Feinstein of California, and Captain Douche, the current governor representing California, all of whom worked with or were having sex with Chinese spies. That stupid old man kept highly secure, top secret documents in his garage behind his car and at his office at some satellite campus of the University of Pennsylvania. These are just things I jotted down to myself before the show started today. How about the military ranks being thinned dramatically? We lost men and women by the score in our military. Recruitment dropped to an all-time low. Why? Many of them were run out. Do you remember why? I do. They were forced to take an experimental shot that didn't work and in fact now may well be killing people. A Chinese spy ring operated out of Joint Base Lewis McChord for 3 years. Did you know that? Probably didn't hear much about it. I wonder if Goldberg over at The Atlantic wrote about that.
And he goes on and on. It's worth seeing the whole video and worth downloading Chris Stegall's podcast as well. But the point is made. That's just scratching the surface on the absolute disaster that was national security under Joe Biden. And now we're meant to believe that Jeffrey Goldberg is terrified that this text was created discussing a very sound military operation in Yemen that was carried off without a hitch. All right, let's bottom line this. Number one, were war plans accidentally texted? No, there were no war plans. So that's a lie. Continues to be a lie, and they continue to use the term war plans. There were no war plans. All right, number two, should they have been using Signal for such top secret conversations? Well, it's fine to use Signal. It was part of the guidance they were given when they started at their jobs. It's certainly what the prior administration was using. In fact, you saw the CIA director say that his computer was installed with Signal right at the beginning. So, you know, like it or not, Signal is something that they use. Number three, who let Jeffrey Goldberg into the chat? That really seems to be the scandal here. The only objectionable, problematic thing in this entire story is that somehow Jeffrey Goldberg at The Atlantic got into this chat. However, his behavior by staying there and lurking and taking screenshots and not saying anything, and then writing up a deceitful, sensationalized story about it after the fact, that seems to be the most inappropriate and frankly immoral actions in this whole story. And finally, number four, we refuse to live up to the standard that they set for us if they refuse to live up to any standard at all. I'm sick and tired of us going after each other because we think that we can preen and take the highest ground because we have such noble and perfect, balanced and ethical positions on all issues that come our way. No, we're partisan. We tell it like it is. We're truthful. We're honest. We're frank. But we're not in a suicide pact. There's no reason why we have to beat ourselves up and start condemning ourselves because of one tiny screw up when they get away with burning the world down. I'm not going to play that game. And if you wanted to tune in and say, oh, well, you know, Larry's going to both sides this and he's going to make sure that everybody gets it from all sides. No, I don't hold myself up on a pedestal like I'm better than everyone else. No, I've got skin in this game. I believe that between the two choices we've got politically in this country, one side is decidedly superior, pro-American, pro-freedom, pro-liberty, and really stands for what our nation has always meant to stand for. And the other side will destroy us. We've seen it. We've come this close to destruction. And I'm not going to help them and harm us by making myself feel better because I'm going to say, yes, this is awful, this is terrible, and everyone should lose their jobs. Oh, give me a break. What's the real scandal here? That a journalist was allowed into the chat. I hate it. Somebody should be held accountable for it. But there ain't no way I'm turning tail and running from the first administration that's actually been doing things for us in many, many years. If you like what you hear on this program, I'd love for you to check out our websites, townhall.com. This is a Town Hall Media show, which you're seeing right here. And we own townhall.com, hotair.com, redstate.com, pjmedia.com, and twitchy.com. They're great conservative sites full of fantastic content. And if you become a VIP member today, you're going to get 50% off your membership. All you got to do is use my name when you sign up. Just use my name, Larry, and you'll get 50% off your VIP membership for all the Town Hall sites. That'll give you an ad-free experience. It'll give you exclusive content that you only get as a VIP member, and you'll be helping our journalism, helping great young investigative reporters that are doing great work across all of those sites. So go check it out, see what all the benefits are, and remember to use my name, Larry, for 50% off your membership to Town Hall VIP. Thank you for that. Boy, we've been spending a lot of time talking about Jasmine Crockett lately. She's the congresswoman from Texas, and she appeared as a guest speaker at Human Rights Campaign. That's HRC. Also the initials of Hillary Rodham Clinton. Not uncoincidental there. Who is HRC? How can I best describe who Human Rights Campaign is? If you like transgender curriculum and policies in your public schools, if you like congresspeople in your state level who are lobbying to keep parents out of sexual discussions about their children's sexual preference or sexual identity, if you like the fact that Bud Light and other corporations ruined their brands by aligning themselves with transgender activists, if you like that Target every month during Pride Month puts damaging content in their store that targets your children, then you'd love HRC, because that's what HRC does. HRC had a list of criteria that corporations had to meet, and if they didn't check certain boxes in the LGBTQ plus agenda, HRC would give them a low rating. And suddenly all these companies were like, oh, well, we don't want to be on HRC's bad side. And so then they started doing things like having Dylan Mulvaney on a Bud Light can. That's HRC. They're great, really fantastic. So here's Jasmine Crockett, who, for all I know, could be a man in drag, speaking at their dinner. And she had a lot to say.
Day that the person that should have been president had to deliver her concession speech, I honestly didn't know how I was going to get out of bed. When I tell y'all, I'm getting emotional, that I traveled this country because I knew it was going to be bad. I didn't know it was going to be this fucking bad shit, but I knew. And I knew that the obstacles were going to be even greater, because not only was it a woman, but it was a woman of color. But man, if you saw Dave.
All right, there she is. She's classy. Keep it classy there, Jasmine. She almost cried, and that would have really been rough, because you don't want that adhesive. It's not water soluble, right? And so it gets wet, and then it starts to get sort of porous and acidic, and then it starts bubbling into your eyes, and it's just painful. You don't want that. But she kept it classy. I mean, in fact, that was probably the sweetest remark she made during the entire speech. Check this out. Speaking of the governor of Texas, who, by the way, is confined to a wheelchair because as a young man, he had an accident that paralyzed him, Governor Greg Abbott. I want you to bear that in mind when you hear Jasmine Crockett now speaking about the governor of Texas.
Because we in these hot ass Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot ass mess, honey. So yeah.
She really is. I loved her in the third season of RuPaul's Drag Show. That's Drag Race. Sorry. That tells you how often I watch that. Do you ever get the sense that she's actually playing a character? Like nobody is, like, especially somebody who's been elected to Congress. It's like, do you want to think that, like, behind the scenes, that's how she talks to Steny Hoyer? Well, actually, our folks at Town Hall Media have put together a good side-by-side comparison. I want you to compare and contrast Jasmine Crockett last night and Jasmine Crockett in the House of Representatives.
We in these hot ass Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot ass mess, honey.
Permitless carry was something that went through the Texas House. And I can remember being on the floor and seeing all the law enforcement officers coming to Austin to lobby us and make sure that we did the right thing.
Don't you get the sense that, like, when even there, by the way, she's sort of putting it on a little bit, but when the cameras are off and they're just sitting around having a glass of wine and discussing tomorrow's work or what they accomplished today, Jasmine Crockett's like, hey, it was a delightful day today at the office, wasn't it? We really took care of a lot of important business, and I really, oh yes, I'd love some tea. Thank you so much. Oh no milk for me, but yes, I'd love a couple of sugars. Thank you so much. 3, yes. Thank you so much. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh, yes, we really must extrapolate upon the original. That's what she talks like in real life. Nobody is the character that she is putting on here. No one in real life is like this unless they're appearing on an old episode of Jerry Springer. You cannot tell me that that's how she really is. And every week it tends to get thicker and thicker and thicker. Have you noticed that too? Look at today, this morning. This morning, she decided she needed to chime in on the big scandal over the Signal chat discussing the strike on the Houthis. So here she is. This is words of wisdom from Jasmine Crockett.
And then y'all want to come at us and act like people of color are the problem or that women are the problem? Like, baby, you probably need a good black woman in the room who can check you and tell you that, first of all, you shouldn't be doing this shit on Signal or anything else.
The good news is MSNBC is at a loss as to how to maintain certain demographics of their audience now that they've lost Joy Reid. And I'm thinking we have a good replacement here. I think we should pair her with Don Lemon, actually, now that I think about it. That's television gold right there. So there's Jasmine Crockett today. Whew, look at that. Jasmine Crockett today telling everybody, as a black woman, you need to have a black woman in that room talking to you, because we'll give you advice like you shouldn't have these conversations on Signal. Now, I kid you not. I wish we were making this up. That was Jasmine Crockett this morning saying that they shouldn't be having these conversations on Signal. This is literally Jasmine Crockett, literally last night at this HRC event.
One day, and we have all these Signal chats. If you don't have Signal, get on Signal, okay? Do not trust that. Get on Signal, y'all.
All right, again, in case you missed it, Jasmine Crockett this morning.
And then y'all want to come at us and act like people of color are the problem or that women are the problem? Like, baby, you probably need a good black woman in the room who can check you and tell you that, first of all, you shouldn't be doing this shit on Signal or anything else.
That's Jasmine Crockett this morning, Jasmine Crockett last night.
One day, and we have all these Signal chats. If you don't have Signal, get on Signal, okay? Do not trust that. Get on Signal, y'all.
Here's the thing. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is like maxing out her donations to Jasmine Crockett's campaign, because the more Jasmine, I feel like AOC is out there trying to book Jasmine on as many appearances as possible, because the more you see of Jasmine Crockett, AOC looks like frickin' Winston Churchill. It's dumbfounding. By the way, I left something out about HRC, Human Rights Campaign. So Human Rights Campaign was formed because they wanted to push marriage equality, is what they called it. That's why their logo is the equals sign, right? Human Rights Campaign, because it's a human right to be able to marry whoever you want. And just wait until you pull that thread and find out what they really want in terms of couplings and marriages, but we'll set that aside for a moment. So Human Rights Campaign is founded, and they raise money and they push to have what they call marriage equality, so same-sex marriage, and that was their agenda. And so then, of course, as you know, Supreme Court decision back in 2013 codifies a federal right for same-sex marriage. And you would think, oh, HRC is going to be like, oh, we're done here, we did it. victory. Let's disband. We don't need to be doing anything anymore. No more fundraising, no more lobbying, no more. Oh, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You talk about a camel's nose under the tent. Apparently, Human Rights Campaign wants a whole lot more than just to have same-sex couples be able to get Social Security benefits or visit each other in the hospital. Oh, yeah, apparently their agenda was way beyond that. And now we've reached a point where HRC is advocating for parents to be separated from their own children if they don't go along with what a school teacher suggests they should do with regard to transitioning their gender. They're in favor of public school teachers keeping sexualized secrets from the child's parents. They're lobbying for that right. They lobby for all of these. And of course, as I mentioned before, they put pressure on corporations to push the LGBTQ plus agenda through their boardrooms, through their policies, through their hiring, through all their DEI practices. That's what HRC does now. But there's one other thing HRC does. They raise and donate a lot of money. A lot of money. And that's why you saw Jasmine Crockett there. And that's why you see this guy here. That's Jabba the Hutt Pritzker, J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois. He wants to be president of the United States. If you're a Democrat and you want to be president of the United States, you need to go to HRC and you need to kiss the ring. And if I were you, I would wipe it off because you don't know where that ring has been. So here is Jabba the Hutt Pritzker last night. Governor of Illinois, billionaire, trying to raise something with HRC.
And this will tell you why Donald Trump doesn't like me very much. I said at the beginning of every stump speech, everything we care about is under siege by a racist, misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic Donald Trump. And I ended every single speech with a question to the crowd. Are you ready for the fight? So here we are again. Everything we care about is under siege. And so I guess I just have one question for all of you tonight. Are you ready for the fight? Are you ready for the fight? HRC, are you ready for the fight? Los Angeles, are you ready for the fight? Let's go get him, everybody. Let's go get him.
Maybe it's me, but when a Democrat politician from Chicago starts screaming at me like that about a fight, like my kneecaps spontaneously shatter. That was the vocal equivalent of taking a lead pipe to my shins. I mean, I'm sorry. You want to dispel the stereotype of the Democrat Party boss who looks like he just stepped out of some backroom mob meeting? Don't put this guy out there. That's freaking terrifying. But he's rallying support. He's rallying support from HRC LGBTQ+. He and Jasmine Crockett both. So take note. 2028 is shaping up. And I can't get enough of that Jasmine Crockett. Pritzker, on the other hand, keep your distance. Hey, do you hate the media as much as I do? I thought you did. That's why we've spent a lot of time on this program focusing on the lies that the media tells you. It inspired me at the end of last year's campaign to write a book about it. It's called Shameless Liars: How Trump Defeated the Legacy Media and Made Them Irrelevant. It's available on Amazon. You can get it in hardcover, paperback, or audiobook. I narrate it, and I barely cough at all during the narration. If you are sick and tired of the media and you recognize how bad they were in this election, get this book because I chronicle some of their worst lies and distortions. But also, if you're looking for a brighter future, if you're looking for a media who will actually adhere to the principles of our Constitution and freedom of the press, get this book because I explain to you the origins of freedom of the press, the origins of the lie that is objectivity in the media. And I show you how Trump defeated them this last election and how things will never be the same. How we, the people, have taken back the news media and we own it now. If you like all of that, get my book. I think you'll love it. It's called Shameless Liars: How Trump Defeated the Legacy Media and Made Them Irrelevant. Thanks. We've seen some crazy takes on that CNN panel that Abby Phillips hosts every night, but last night was one of the craziest. Take a look at this, and you tell me how insane you have to be to formulate these thoughts about the United States of America.
Well, I think the challenge here is we actually don't know if a lot of these people, I don't trust the Trump administration to tell me who these people are and if they're actually gang members. In January, the Trump administration arrested over 1,200 people. ICE arrested over 1,200 people. Less than half were actually convicted criminals, where there was no evidence that they had done anything wrong other than step foot in this country.
Well, they don't have to be criminals. This is not a prosecution.
A lot of people were caught
with criminals. They were executing warrants for criminals. So you might be a gangbanger. Your buddy's sitting on the couch next to you, also illegal. Those are people that got caught up in these dragnets. So I'm not upset one bit.
I think my point about
That's right. And let me just pause there because it gets worse, I promise you. But understand that the entire premise of what she was about to say was set up on a complete damnable lie. Now, you watch this show, so you know the truth about these sweeps of illegal immigrant criminals. Had these cities like Chicago and San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, if they didn't have sanctuary policies and release child molesters and rapists and murderers right back into the community, if they had actually held them and cooperated with ICE law enforcement officials at the federal level and handed them over in a safe, secure environment in a jail cell, then this wouldn't be a problem, you see. But instead, these cities run by people like her and her pals in the Democrat Party, they love to preen themselves on the sanctimony of their sanctuary policies. And they say, oh, we're a sanctuary. We're going to protect you. We're going to let you out into the community. Well, when you let them out into the community, ICE is still going to go after them. They go into the neighborhoods. They knock on the doors. They go into the house. They get the creep. They get the murderer. They get the child molester. But anyone else who's in the house, including your abuela, who hasn't broken the law, except maybe shoplift some Goya beans at the local bodega, she gets sent home too. And all of them have violated the law, young lady, by definition, because they are in the country illegally. Otherwise, they wouldn't use the word illegal. That is literally breaking the law. All right, so the entire thing that you're about to see, this entire wackadoodle diatribe has been set up on this false premise. And good for that dude. He's a former Republican New York City Council member there. Good for him for calling her on it. Okay. And saying, yeah, listen, there are people that got swept up in this, but that's not ICE's fault. Okay. But now she continues because she gets like, okay, regardless of the truth, regardless of the fact, let me just make my point because it's super wackadoodle.
About them just randomly, indiscriminately rounding up people. I have flashbacks. I'm old enough to remember when they were doing this with actual children. And according to the Human Rights Law, or the Human Rights Watch rather, there are still over 1,300 children who they never reunited with their family. We don't know where they are. So all
right, let me just jump in there. This guy's going to do fine, but I also want to jump in. So she's claiming that there are 1,300 children who have not been reunited with their parents since the first Trump administration. That seems terrible, right? There are nearly 400,000 children who came in under Joe Biden that HHS under Mayorkas, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, under Mayorkas and under the Biden administration admitted under oath that they had lost track of them. So she's really concerned about 1,300 so-called child separations, and she has nothing to say about the 400,000 children that were handed over to child traffickers and God knows what. But of course, this is information and context that is never shared with the CNN viewing audience. Okay, keep going, wackadoodle.
So I think this idea.
Why are these children here? Why is
because their families were trying to escape incomprehensible circumstances.
The reason why we don't know who Trent Ayagua is, why there's children here, is because the failures of Joe Biden in letting people in.
Again, it goes back to Joe Biden. He's not the president right now.
He let the people in.
The fact of the
they
matter
came in because Joe Biden failed on the border.
Okay, fine. If we want to say Joe Biden failed on the border, fine. But the fact of the matter is,
to this country, and now
Joe, then Tiffany, then Dan.
I point out.
Oh, you're done? Okay. No. Tiffany.
Joe Biden let these people in. If she has a problem that we don't know who they are, that they were unvetted, this could have been solved in a regular immigration process where we would have seen, hey, you're a member of a gang. You can't come in. Hey, you're not a member of a gang. You're welcome to come in.
Tiffany?
I don't think that is how it goes. And if we want to keep talking about the Joe Biden
yes.
administration, then we can rewind time. But the fact of the matter is, when Donald Trump was in office the first time, he was a champion of separating families. And as a result of that, John, I just want to say over 1,300 children remain lost. I do not trust this administration.
We are talking, we're talking about the Alien Enemies Act here. We're talking about using this wartime powers to extract what they call
human
gang
rights
members.
issue. And the way that these people are treated is completely inhumane. And the fact of the matter is, if these were white babies being stripped from their families, if these were white men with families, there would be a whole different level of humanity extended to them. And I don't see that happening. The way these people are treated is absolutely criminal.
There you go. So the criminals are not the murderers. The criminals are not the rapists. The criminals are not the child molesters. The criminals are not the thieves. The criminals are not the people who are breaching our immigration policies, breaching our borders, and entering and staying in our country illegally. The criminals are not the people who obtain false identifications and false social security numbers so that they can continue to work illegally in this country, making tax-free money in this country. They're not the criminals. The criminals are the ICE law enforcement agencies and the members of the Trump administration who are actually enforcing the law as written on the books. And why? Why are they enforcing these laws? Why are they doing this? Because they're white and the illegal immigrants aren't. According to Tiffany Cross, author of Say It Louder, Black Voters, White Narratives, and Saving Our Democracy. At what point are we done with this? At what point does a major news organization trying to have some level of discourse and conversation about important policies facing this country, a policy, by the way, that is favored by close to 65% of the American people? Do you know how hard it is to get 65% of the American people to agree on anything? Especially when it comes to politics and government policy. But the latest poll showed that nearly 65% of the American people believe that Trump's policies towards illegal immigrants and criminals who are in this country illegally is the proper policy. And yet CNN goes out of its way to book this woman to sit on this panel and lecture all of us and the audience that if these were white babies, if these were white people, then there would be some level of empathy and this policy would not be carried out in the way that it is. I'll tell you, when they shave the heads of the Tren de Aragua murderers and gang members and terrorists from Venezuela, when they shave their head and put them in a white jumpsuit and put them in handcuffs and they frog march them on and off of an airplane in El Salvador into their prison, I'll be honest, I didn't notice what race they were. It made no difference to me. It's funny, when your child is abducted and sexually assaulted and murdered and left in a ditch, it really doesn't matter what color the person is that does that to your child. But for race baiters like this, that's all that matters. But honestly, I don't even blame her. I don't even blame her at this point. I blame CNN. That CNN said, oh, hey, we've got a good idea. We got a good idea. Let's have somebody sit on this panel and boil down the complex issues having to do with enforcement of our immigration laws and the use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport illegal immigrant criminals to a foreign nation. Let's have this person come on and debate that issue. Let's have a person who wrote a book called Say It Louder, Black Voters, White Narratives, and Saving Our Democracy, and have her shoot the entire thing through the prism of race. That's CNN's fault. And frankly, it's all of our fault for continuing to tolerate this and let it happen. We're better than this. CNN, however, is not. While you're over at the Town Hall website and getting your VIP membership, you should also check out our merch store because we get a lot of great Town Hall merch. But of course, the greatest thing that you'll get there is the Larry mug. This is the Larry. So now people say, why would I want to get a Larry mug? Well, first of all, you're supporting the show. Okay, that's obvious, number one. Number two, think about this. You take this to the office, okay? You get your coffee in the Larry mug. You're sitting there drinking it. And people are like, wait a minute, that's not your mug. your name's not Larry. Your name is Susan. And then you can look at them and say, my name is Susan Jones, but you can call me Larry. What a moment that would be. Right? And then when they say, I don't get it, you can say, all right, here, come here. Let me show you this really cool guy on whatever platform you're watching us on right now. I was about to name a brand and then I realized. So anyway, go get your merch. This is my favorite, and it's good for coffee. It's good for tea. It's good for hot chocolate, and it's good for vodka. I'm told, allegedly. But get your Larry mugs right now at the Town Hall merch store. The link is in the show notes on the player you're watching right now. All right, yesterday, one of these liberal, out-of-control judges who were trying to play president and dictate to the executive branch how they can and can't conduct foreign affairs, well, they outdid all the other judges who have been nuts. They rendered a decision having to do with these illegal immigrant criminals who have been deported to a prison in El Salvador. By the way, it's worth dwelling on this for a moment. These are Venezuelan nationals who were deliberately sent to this country to wreak havoc on us. They are criminals and they are gang members. They got here illegally. They've now been rounded up. Why did we send them to a prison in El Salvador and not back to Venezuela? Because they're so bad, Venezuela refused to take them. And yet we've got judges in this country saying that we have to keep them. It's like they are literally from Venezuela. They are here illegally. We want to send them home. Their own country won't take them. But this judge says we got to take them? Make it make sense. But that's not the craziest part. Listen to what this judge said about how these criminal, murdering, thieving, child molesting, raping, illegal gang member terrorists from Venezuela, listen to how she says they were treated.
Those were words, I mean, anytime someone uses the word Nazi, people's ears are going to perk up, right? And it's a very specific example in this case because it was the last time that this law was really put into practice.
Sorry, let me jump in because I thought that she said it here. This judge said that the Trump administration treated these people worse than we treated Nazis. That's what she said in her decision. All right, so now let's have the discussion.
What did you learn at court today, and what's your read on what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, everybody did perk up when Judge Millett said that during the hearing, but she really reframed this entire discussion of the Venezuelan migrants being put on a plane and sent. There's been all this drama about the judge and the judge at the lower court and what the Justice Department and the Trump administration were doing to communicate. But this brought clarity to the law here and refocused us, at least me watching the hearing, listening to the hearing, around what the court appears to care about now.
Let me just say, you're a moral idiot. Not you, reporter, although honestly, if this brought moral clarity to you, you've got a problem too. You're a moral idiot, Judge, if you in any way suggest that we're treating these people harsher than we treated Nazis. You look at Dresden for a second, would you? Now, of course, the point she was making was that it was Germans who were in the country legally, by the way, during the time that the World War II broke out. By the way, Judge, have you heard of the Japanese internment, where American citizens of Japanese descent were treated pretty poorly by the Democrat Franklin Roosevelt administration, if we're really walking down World War II memory lane? But that's fine. Tom Homan was on Stuart Varney yesterday, and responded to the Nazi comment.
Appeals court judge says that Nazis received better treatment than those deported Venezuelans. Would you like to respond to that, Tom?
Well, it's disgusting, right? What, comparing this to the Holocaust, comparing this to the Nazis? I mean, come on, give me a break. I don't even know what the comparison even means. All I know, we followed the process. The President of the United States, through his proclamation, invoked the authorities he has within the Alien Enemies Act, an act that was enacted by Congress and signed by the President. We're enforcing the law with the laws that are on the books. We're not making this up. Unlike the last administration, who several district court judges said not only were they ignoring the law, they're actually violating the law when they're abusing the parole process. We're going to use every tool in the toolbox to arrest public safety threats and national security threats and get them out of this country. The President Trump committed to the American people, the worst first, that's what we're doing. That plane, TDA, MS-13, they're a designated terrorist organization. We were removing over 200 terrorists from this country, and we're going to keep doing it because that's what the American people want.
Yeah, amen. Border czar Tom Homan. Greg Jarrett is the legal analyst over on Fox, and he was asked the same question. What about the legal basis of this and the judge's decision?
Well, first of all, let's start with today's hearing. I wasn't surprised by the inflammatory, incendiary language by an appellate court judge. It was intentional. Anytime you can use the word Nazi and Trump in the same sentence, they think it's a win-win. But the truth is, the president has unchallenged authority under the Alien Enemies Act. The Supreme Court has reviewed it, as you pointed out, Sean, with Pam Bondi. The act precludes judicial review. Quote, courts may not pass judgment on the exercise of the president's discretion. And yet Boasberg, he doesn't care. He's defying the highest court in the land. He claims, well, it's a terrible attack on due process. No, it's not. Because under this singular law passed by Congress, an alien can be removed without a hearing. And yet the appellate court was so unbothered by any of that today. At least there was one judge who was on the right track. He questioned whether the D.C. court itself has jurisdiction. Guess what? They don't. The plaintiffs were in Texas when their petition was filed, and under the law, only a federal court in Texas has jurisdiction.
Other than that, it was a great decision. You were wrong. The statute says there is no judicial review. There never has been in the over 200 years that the law has been on the books and applied at various times throughout our history. And, oh, by the way, the guy was in Texas and it's outside the jurisdiction of the district court in D.C. But other than that, great job, Judge. By the way, they're pointing out this Alien Enemies Act that has been on the book since the Adams administration, has been used at various times. And this judge points out that it was used during World War II for members of the Nazi Party who were found to have been living in the United States of America. You know, we had a lot of German immigrants who were living in this country when the war broke out. I just pointed out what we did, what Franklin Roosevelt on behalf of the United States did to Japanese American citizens. These are citizens. People don't realize that when they think about this dark time in our history, when we had the Japanese internment camps. We shouldn't even call them Japanese internment camps. We should call them American internment camps. These were American citizens. These were in many cases the people who were born in this country, or they were Japanese nationals who got their citizenship in this country, who were just rounded up. They had to sell all their possessions. They weren't allowed to own property. Everything, and of course, when the government forces you to sell all your possessions, trust me, you're getting pennies on the dollar for it because you don't have a choice. And then they were all carted off thousands of miles away into hellish conditions in these internment camps. Even children of some of these Japanese Americans who were held in these internment camps, who joined the military and fought the Japanese in the war, but their parents were interned. It's unbelievable. So that to compare what just happened with these 250 illegal immigrants who have been deemed terrorists, who were in the country illegally. I mean, forget about, okay, they're non-citizens, but they have a green card. No, they got nothing. They came into this country illegally. They continued to wreak havoc. They continued to break the law. It is a complete and total misapplication of comparing the Alien Enemies Act during World War II versus what's going on right here. And the Nazis she's referring to are people who were in this country and they were arrested and they were imprisoned. The only reason why they weren't sent back to Germany is because we didn't want them to take up a gun and start killing us on the warfields at the Battle of the Bulge, for God's sake. It's honestly, you have to be an idiot, I think, sometimes to be a judge in this country, or at least to be put on the bench by the Biden or Obama administration. In fact, we know that because we've seen Senator Kennedy question some of these people, and they don't have a basic understanding of the law. But my biggest problem with them is that they don't have a basic understanding of morals and ethics and right and wrong and what's appropriate for a country to protect itself. This morning, they took up this issue on Fox and Friends. Kayleigh McEnany made a great point.
Judge Mallet, I don't think we've expressed an appropriate level of rage for what she said. Yes, you are entitled to a hearing unless it's the Alien Enemies Act, where it's special wartime powers that mean the alien does not get a hearing. But Nazis got better treatment, okay?
That was despicable.
Homan said Laken Riley didn't get due process. Rachel Warren, a mother of 4, did not get a modicum of due process when she was slaughtered out for a run. Nor did Nungari, that little girl who went to a convenience store. So when the judge talks about Nazis and TDA, I can tell you the average American hears the young girls and mothers who have lost their lives who didn't get any due.
That's absolutely right. And good job from Kayleigh McEnany, as usual, on Fox and Friends this morning, sitting in. Listen, issues like this and stories like this and policies like this, they're maddening, and it'll make you upset, and it'll make you, raise your voice like I just did. And I apologize for that. But here's why I love these stories, because they're clarifying. This lets you know exactly where everybody stands on issues like this. And you're either for protecting our country, for protecting our borders, for the rule of law, or you bend yourself over backwards and twist yourself into a pretzel to make sure that people who are in the country illegally, who have gang tattoos all over their body, who have a record as long as your arm, and I can see you've got very long arms, going back to Venezuela, where the country of Venezuela knows that you're such a bad hombre that they won't even take you back because they don't want you anywhere near the mean streets of Managua. Wait, that's Nicaragua. Caracas. That's what I meant. If you are on that side, if you are twisting yourself into a pretzel to make sure that human rights and civil rights and due process are afforded to the people who don't even bother to respect the due process of entering the country legally or not, then it is incredibly clarifying to me in terms of who you might be and who you decide to politically affiliate yourself with. Because I'd be more than happy to afford them due process if they actually had one modicum of respect for the due process we demand for people who enter this country. We're a very warm and welcoming nation. We have extended our hospitality over the centuries to people from all walks of life. We are the land of opportunity, and we welcome you. We do. We ask one thing. As you're coming in to take one of the rooms in our hotel, how about you sign the guest book on the way in, just so we know who you are? Is that so much to ask? Apparently, if you're a Biden or Obama appointed judge on the federal bench, yes, that is too much to ask. Who the hell do we think we are, enforcing our laws and everything? All right, that's a wrap. Whew. A super chat for $5 from Angela. Thank you, Angela, our sweet angel. Man, we were inundated with super chats yesterday, weren't we, Kevin? I went back and took a look at that. You guys were so generous with the super chats yesterday, and we really appreciate it. I can guarantee illegal monsters being deported, even to Bukele Brigade, are treated more humane than Laken Riley, Justin Nungari, and many more. Exactly. This tells you exactly where your priorities are, Angela. Everyone who is weeping over these guys. I mean, I'll go so far. I don't know. This may come out wrong because I know that it goes against everything that we're supposed to respect with regard to our civil rights, our Constitution, our process, and our jurisprudence in this country. But the fact of the matter is, if we found out after the fact that of the 250 that we sent down to El Salvador, of those 250, we can guarantee you that 249 of them were all hardened, mass murdering, rapists, child molesters, and they had no business being here. But one innocent person got wrapped up in that. Now, I know that we're supposed to have a system of justice in this country where if just one innocent person gets wrapped up, then, well, we've got to, bend over backwards to make sure that doesn't happen. I'll be honest with you. Because, again, these are not citizens. It is 100% confirmed that everybody who was sent out of here were in the country illegally. All right. So, but what if one of them was in the country illegally, but had never committed any crime, and now they're rotting away in this horrific prison condition in El Salvador? It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm okay with that. Sorry, because if you got swept up in this, it meant that you were traveling with some pretty bad dudes, and you shouldn't have been in the country illegally. And what the hell were you doing here? Sorry. Not sorry. Another $2 super chat from Angela. Have free time looking for a good book suggestion. Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, I need more information from you. And you don't have to pay for these super chats. I'm watching the chat right now. Angela, are you looking for fiction or nonfiction?
I think she's looking for something about shameless liars.
No, I was going to actually go through this in an organic way. I knew that's where we were going to end up, but all right, fine. Yes, I do have a book suggestion for you. It's Shameless Liars, How Trump Defeated the Legacy Media and Made Them Irrelevant by Larry O'Connor. I think you'll like it. Look, it has endorsements here from, let's get that into focus, Governor Scott Walker, Ambassador Richard Grinnell, Mark Levin, Sean Spicer, and Molly Hemingway. All endorsing my book right there. And really, you should get it for the artwork. Is that not gorgeous? I love that book cover. So there you go. And it is a nonfiction book. Everything in here is true and fact-checked, especially my opinions. It's a gorgeous book. You'll love it. Thank you, Angela, for the invitation for another plug. All right, guys. Thank you for the show today. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.